Well, we're going to find out what to expect in the grain and livestock markets here in this segment when we talk now with Rich Nelson of Allendale Incorporated in McHenry, Illinois. Rich, a lot of stuff to talk about over the weekend. We had a little bit of rain activity in much of the Corn Belt and the Plains region as well. Folks trying to get the harvest out, but it sounds like it may be going in fits and starts. What do you hear?
Certainly the case right now. So we did see a weekend, a couple of different systems run through here. Central Missouri saw rains up to an inch, inch and a half. Eastern Nebraska, up on the northern corridor, northern Illinois, and also into Michigan. Rains anywhere from 1 inch to, in many cases, up to 5 inches for many of these producers in northern reaches. So looks like these guys might be out of the fields here for at least just a few days here.
Okay, so I was hearing as well that it seems like maybe from Illinois up toward Michigan, they seem to have some extremely heavy rainfall and maybe even some flooding in some cases there. So yeah, it's going to be a little while before the combines can travel. They may have to leave the low spots here this time around. Overall, are you getting updates on what the harvest results are from your clients around the country here?
We sure are, and for the most part, nothing but the same so far from what we've heard for the past couple of weeks, which is for the most part as expected, if not in most cases a little better than expected. So still more or less confirming what we learned from USDA last week, that for the most part this crop is a little better than what the trade had been talking about, certainly on the corn side of things here.
Well, Rich, a lot of folks gave USDA a lot of grief through the growing season for having such exceedingly high yield estimates on the corn and soybeans, and now it seems like everybody's gravitating toward those numbers or maybe even raising them now.
I've got to agree with that statement. There's no doubt that for this year we definitely saw the weather and saw some valid concerns about it. And for the most part, this crop has done a little better than what you would expect. And certainly some of the experts, including our own weather model, these yield numbers are running about 2.5 bushels higher than we would consider a very good weather and yield model would suggest. So no doubt, better than expected numbers across the board here.
Okay, so today eventually we'll get some new crop progress or harvest progress numbers, crop condition updates. We will also, of course, be getting some NOPA crush numbers today in this particular time frame. Do you think that'll have much impact on the market, though?
You know, I don't think it'll impact the trade too much here. As a reminder here, this NOPA crush covers September, which is the very first month of the brand new marketing year, so a lot of years still waiting in front of us here. As it stands right now, estimates are running pretty good here for the most part. 6% higher than last year is what the average trade guess of 138 million bushels would show. So as it stands, certainly good to see, but the market, like you certainly mentioned, probably looking at the big picture of things here right now.
Let's take a look at our Globex trade overnight and get everyone updated on the market activity here. As we get set up for the daytime session, we'll focus first of all on the corn market here overnight. And it looks like just a little bit of weakness as we got into the early morning hours here. We had the December corn down 3/4 at $3.52 per bushel. On the soybean trade, even a little more weakness. We were down about 4 1/4 on the January contract, trading at 10.06 even. And on the wheat trade, in Chicago's December contract, we were 1 3/4 higher at 441 1/4. Kansas City wheat on the December is 1 3/4 higher at 438 overnight. And in the Minneapolis wheat trade, we had December trading fractionally higher, up 3/4 at 615 3/4. Cotton market had December trading about 66 lower at 67.96 cents per pound. How are the large commodity funds positioned here on the grain side, Rich?
You know, as far as this goes, this has been an issue where they have been obviously selling here in recent weeks. But now as we look and we turn the corner towards some new changes after this October timeframe, the trade is certainly wondering if we're going to see some type of general buying pattern going on here over these next few weeks. As we know, October 3rd is typically the seasonal low for these grain markets. Let's see if that happens. And like you mentioned, if the funds also support this move here in the coming weeks.
All right, Rich, we will take a little break here, and then I want to pick your brain here for a little bit and find out what's going on in the livestock trade. Very active movement in that cash cattle trade, and we'll talk about it when we come back in just a moment. Right now, we're talking with Rich Nelson of Allendale Incorporated in McHenry, Illinois. And Rich, we're going to focus here on the livestock trade. And I want to point out a couple of things. We can pull up the livestock summary here related to Friday's market action. And in the cash cattle trade, it turned into a fairly active week last week. We had a market trend that was up $2 or $3 from the week before, and look at the prices that were fetched. It looks like about $111 per hundredweight on a live basis, and if you look at the prices on a dress basis, overall the trade seemed to be hovering around 175. It looked like we had a range on Friday about 174 to 175 or thereabouts. I was amazed at the activity in Nebraska. Sold 38,000 head last week, and Iowa came in second with 26,000 head. Were you surprised to see that many cattle coming out of Iowa last week?
You know, we certainly were, and usually, obviously, we know these northern sales typically just a little bit lighter, typically, than a lot of the sales we typically see in the South. One thing we can discuss is the idea that the previous week's sales were actually a little light, so perhaps a lot of these might have been some makeup sales and getting producers back to current. As it stands, though, let's be honest here, we're not in any serious lax marketing issue going on right now for the cattle industry. These weights are still, for the most part, not bouncing up as much as they could have been here at this time of year.
So taking a closer look at those cash cattle prices here, Kansas had sold for the week about 18,000 head. And it looks like the average price there was hovering around 111 at the end of the week. Nebraska had moved 38,000. Texas, 9,200 head. Colorado came in with sales of 2,000 head. And Iowa, as I mentioned, 26,600 head. And we also had a firmer box beef cutout value as we wrapped up the week there. It looked like we had the choice cuts up about 78 cents. And we had select cuts about 60 cents higher on Friday afternoon, according to USDA. Overall, how are you calling the cattle market this morning?
You know, as far as this, we'll see it mainly steady here for today's discussion. I do think a lot of the trade is still waiting for this next breakout move in terms of these markets, continue to push prices higher. For the bear side of things here, it looks like things kind of quiet here, at least for this week's discussion. Typically, we do see numbers stay stable as far as slaughter numbers next couple of weeks. If we're going to have one big bounce, it's going to be weight in terms of supply. It'll be held back until November here.
We also had higher cash hog prices. We had higher pork product values Friday afternoon, according to USDA. Bellies were up $1.08. Carcass values were up 62 cents. What's the penny calls here on the hog trade on the open this morning here on Monday?
And as far as the hogs, it looks like we see more of a stable approach here for things as well on the hog side. Great gains here in the past 2 weeks. Looks like last week's trade kind of more or less mixed. But for this week, we're watching the supply flow very closely. Just like with the cattle, one thing certainly which is lined up for the hogs is this next push higher for supply. Still haven't reached the year's largest push yet on the supply front, for the hogs at least.
Yeah, they are moving through a lot of numbers with those 2 additional plants open now and operating. Rich, good to visit with you. Thank you, sir, and look forward to talking with you real soon once again, all right?
Sounds great. Thank you.
Rich Nelson of Allendale Incorporated in McHenry, Illinois. Janet, we're almost there, getting within about 5.5 minutes of go time.
Just about got another Monday underway.
Yep.
Thank you very much, Marlon.